No, don't.
Well, you could be wasting it if we don't get it on film.
At this point in time, the colony of Georgia was a strip along the Savannah River basin. Most of it was occupied, if you want to say that, owned by the Creeks and the Cherokees. It was basically split in the middle, with the Cherokees on the Creeks on the south side and the Cherokees on the north side. While these guys were fighting the Brits, there was also Indian fights going on, trying to take over the land. So most people think of Georgia as the state it is now, or possibly even stretching to the Mississippi River. At that time it was false. It was a stretch. It was just a thin line. And when you get over into Wilkes County, that's about as far as it went. Thank you.
You're welcome. So basically what you're saying is the state of Georgia was basically this little sliver of the Savannah River where we live now.
Yes.
So we were like, this was like America.
Yeah. This
America.
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Okay. No, really, at some point, I'll cut this off now. I want your take on the Civil War history and the whole thing, and just go as long as you can, because I'd love to get all of it.
How long you got? I go all day long.
Until November, until the end of November.
You're going to have to stretch that out.
So we can do it. I'll come back. So we can either do it at your place or at my place or someplace in between, anywhere you want to do it, where you're most comfortable. Okay?
I'm comfortable talking about it anytime.
Okay. I don't have my camera, my good camera now. So I'll reconnoiter. I'll reconnoiter with you when I have my good camera.
Okay. All I'll say right now about the War of Northern Aggression, or the Second War for Independence, was that it was not a civil war. The South never intended, the southern states, the states that said we don't want to play anymore, did not want to take over the federal government, which happens in the Civil War. You have one aspect trying to take over the government of the other, and two aspects trying to get control of the government. The southern states said, we don't want any more to do with it. We want to leave. It was perfectly legal at that time, and as far as I know, it still may be legal, other than the fact the southern states were forced to sign an allegiance to the United States saying they wouldn't do it anymore. Texas did not sign that. Texas can still legally leave the country.
Thank you, ladies.
And since it was forced, I'm of the persuasion that the rest of them can leave too.
I look forward to future videos about that. Would you like to introduce yourself for YouTube?
It was the Second American Revolution. There was a lot of atrocities going on at the time.
Would you like to introduce yourself for the YouTube audience? Oh, this is going to be good. I'll introduce you if you'd like. This is my friend Butch, friend and neighbor. Butch has often expressed views to me which I find to be not exactly in line with a lot of common beliefs, and I think his views are interesting, and I would love to share them with some other people, but I am not knowledgeable enough or articulate enough to do so. So I've asked him to speak on matters, and I will stop talking now. But let me just say this. I believe you have views on history of the Civil War, the South, the Revolutionary War, things of that nature that a lot of people don't even know about.
Okay, first of all, I'm by no way an expert. History fascinated me for the whole fact of slavery and the black mark it put on my heritage. And as I was growing up, when I was in the Army, I learned what the rest of the world thought about Southerners. We were a bunch of inbred, stupid rednecks, to be honest with you. In the corporate world, I worked with people from England and other parts of Europe that basically, even in the 2000s, had the same ideology. So I'm going to start by first addressing slavery. Slavery was not unique to the United States. Slavery has been in existence, from what I can dig out, from almost the time of man. Egyptians, Romans, you name it, had slaves, some shape, form, or fashion. The modern day slavery, as I call it, which affected what is now the United States, I won't say America because there's North America, South America, and North America includes Canada. So when I speak, I'm not going to say America, I'm going to say the United States. The modern era, I can't put a handle on it, sometime between 1400 and 1600. The Arab nations, as well as European nations, started trading, if you will, for slaves with African tribal leaders. African tribes would raid each other and take hostages or capture their personnel. They in turn would use some of them as their own personal slaves and then sell those that they did not want, or maybe they had too many and wanted to sell them. So slavery is not as simplistic as the one-liners of today would like to say. That being said, the U.S., or what is now the U.S., became involved very early on in the slave trade. It was lucrative. It was money to be made. In fact, Rhode Island rum was a medium of exchange for a slave. Now, when you talk about slaves that ended up on the United States, was a very small percentage of the overall slave trade. A lot of the slaves during that period of time were sent to the Caribbean and other places. So the slave trade was lucrative. Most of the northern states participated. In fact, the shipbuilders in the north outfitted ships for slave trade well after the hostilities of the 1860s. So when you hear somebody, well, the southern states slaves, yes, we did. And how it grew, I don't know. Other than the fact that it was potentially a matter of survival. They were primarily agricultural and needed a large labor force to get the crops, plant them, put them in, take care of them, and harvest them. However, contrary to popular belief, not every southerner owned slaves. Only about 30% if you listen to the Huffington Post, 20% if you listen to others. So not every person in the South owned slaves, which created a controversy. The whites, trying to make their living out of the earth, which was the primary way in the South, had to compete against slave labor, which didn't sit too well. There was another controversy because the South has been and was the Bible Belt, and it went against the teachings of Christ, creating quite a disturbance, particularly among the females in the South. And there was, before the hostilities of the 1860s, there was beginning to be a movement to figure out a way to free slaves. Economically, it made sense because slave owners were having to take care of the slaves 365 days a year. They did not need them 365 days a year. So, slave is a complex issue. Were some of them really slaves? Sure. There were absentee slave plantation owners, many from the north, that abused and mistreated the slaves, no question about it. However, a lot of the southerners that owned 4 to 6 slaves treated them like family and took care of them, and they took care of each other. So it was kind of a mixed breed of animal. Enough on slavery. We'll come back to that at a later date. But let's go back to the first American War for Independence. Some people refer to it as the American Revolution. Contrary to popular belief, what's taught in government schools, or some might refer to them as public schools, I refer to them as indoctrination schools, and we can talk about that anytime you want to, seems to put on the charade that every one of the U.S. folks, I won't call them citizens because the U.S. wasn't formed, but the people coming in to settle the United States were 100% in favor of the first American War for Independence. That's totally false. The U.S. was divided. There were those who wanted to stay under British control, particularly in the South. And I want you to pay attention to this, particularly in the South. The South had strong trade relations because of their agricultural society, primarily at that time, tobacco. And they relied on the British as a market. If they cut the British off, they would basically use your business mind, cutting their demand off. So what were they supposed to live on? Notice that there were more folks in the South in favor of the British than in the North. Was this the beginning of the divide between the North and the South? Time will tell. As the war went on, or the hostilities went on for the American War of Independence, it started to be somewhat of a tit for tat in the North with George Washington and his troops. You've heard all the stories. He chopped down the cherry tree, he crossed the Delaware, his men didn't have any shoes. Well, all part true. But they were also well funded and had ammunition and such to fight the British. And they were holding their own against a well-formed British militia. The South was totally split as far as their allegiance to the U.S., or what would soon be the U.S., and the Brits. Whigs versus Tories. My family, I understand at least one side was a Tory, meaning we sided with the British. Didn't settle too well with some of the future generations of that side of the family, and I have no proof. So the Whigs were those in favor of the American War of Independence. The British was getting tired of the war. They were catching a lot of flack from the citizens in England. Keep in mind, at this point in time, England was transitioning from a total totalitarian deal with the king being the almighty ruler to a parliament-type situation, political deal that they did have now. And King George was catching a lot of flack from the citizens to do something. Cornwallis, General Cornwallis, that everybody I'm sure has read about in the textbooks, was put in charge of the Southern British Army. Their ideology is the northern section was struggling, that if they could get allegiance and take over North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, parts of Florida, and take complete control of them, they could put an end to the war. Cornwallis had 2 generals, a General Ferguson and a General Tarleton, that he relied heavily on. They were his 2 best generals he could have. One of the first skirmishes in the South was the Battle of Camden, South Carolina, which Tarleton was in charge of the British troops and squashed the Patriots, or Whigs if you want to call them that, the U.S. favorites. But along the lines of this time, the British began to make some serious errors. Yes, the South was split. A lot of people wanted to remain under British control. But the army went crazy. And they began occupying people's homes. They began taking people's things for their own use. They began taking advantage of the women. They began, if they thought you were even hinting of being a favorite to the revolution, that they would burn you out. At that point, the South began to turn and say, wait a minute, we don't mind supporting you and trading with you, but this is getting out of hand. So the South began to turn. After Camden, there was a battle at Kings Mountain, South Carolina, up near Greenville-Spartanburg. Ferguson was the commanding general. And Kings Mountain was an interesting battle. It was also a turning point in the Revolutionary War. Leave it to the South to have a turning point. The Patriot Army was comprised of a lot of men who came over the Appalachian Mountains in favor of the American Revolution. These men, which will lead to another subject later on, had been involved in the Indian Wars, particularly in the Ohio Valley. Remember, at this time, the continental United States did not look like what it looks today. Kentucky, Ohio, and that section of the country was considered wilderness, that the people coming in wanted, because people that were migrating to the United States and Europe were looking for land and a way to make a living and have a decent life they didn't have back in Europe. The only problem was the Native Americans occupied and controlled it. Therefore, it led to a bunch of skirmishes, if you will, with the Indians. So these gents came over across the mountain, were well-proven warriors, and understood what took place in the battle. Ferguson's men were largely Southern folks as well, who were not as battle-tested as these gentlemen who came over the Appalachians. Ferguson and a few of his men, high-ranking men, were about the only British involved in that battle. Kings Mountain was a battle of Southern brother against Southern brother. In the end, the boys across from the Appalachian won the battle. Ferguson met his demise, leaving Tarleton as Cornwallis's only remaining superior general. Right after Camden and Kings Mountain, they came to battle. Cowpens is again up around the Greenville-Spartanburg area. You run through it when you run up 85 and today as you're running through Greenville-Spartanburg. Tarleton was known to be a winner. He could figure out how to win battles, and he took no prisoners. The American Army, U.S. Army, patriots, if you will, were comprised of men out of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And they were actually a Maryland Army brigade, or fought under the Maryland Brigade in its flag. The Cowpens flag that I fly in front of my house looks a lot like Betsy Ross, but there's a difference. These gentlemen had nothing to gain, but a whole lot to lose, because the British were getting more and more violent on their homeland. Tarleton was totally defeated in that battle. And I can't lay my hands on it, but I don't know if he survived or did not survive. So, Camden, a great victory for the British. They thought it was going to be an easy road to take over the southern colonies, or what was the southern colonies. To Kings Mountain, they took a defeat. To Cowpens. And then there were several other battles. One was in Guilford, North Carolina, that the Patriots won. And as the British Army was trying to work its way back to Augusta and Savannah, both controlled by the British, they won the British control, they came into a little known area in Wilkes County called Kettle Creek. Kettle Creek, you're going to find Elijah Clark, a gentleman by the name of Dooley, and a gentleman by the name of Pickens. And at Kettle Creek, these three generals and their ragtag army of patriots, again, soundly defeated the British, which basically started the push. All these battles started to push Cornwallis back to Yorktown and his ultimate surrender, which basically ended the American War of Independence, first American War of Independence, and the American Revolution. Once again, the home front of the British were tired of the war. They took a sound beating, and you can relate this to Vietnam if you wish. There was not a whole lot of support here for Vietnam. And I can throw a little cliché in there. We had the War won, but Nixon didn't realize it after his bombings. That didn't have anything to do with this conversation. So as Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, it virtually ended the first war, American War for Independence. Now keep in mind that during this time, the colonies were not as people think they are. Georgia did not look like Georgia. It didn't extend its way to the Mississippi River. It did one time, short period of time. But during this period of time, it was a small sliver of land along the Savannah River. 96, South Carolina, which I would encourage everybody to go visit. It's right across the river from where we are today, Overton, Georgia, probably less than 60 miles. 96 was a trading post during this period of time, the revolutionary period of time, if you will. It was called 96 because it was exactly 96 miles from Fort George on the Kiowee River, which is pushing close to Greenville-Spartanburg. Notice how Greenville-Spartanburg is somewhat of the key point in some of this. A lot of people came down through Greenville-Spartanburg, coming into the South, looking for land and opportunity. My people probably came, in fact, I know my grandmother came, one of my great-grandmothers came through Greenville, because my great-grandfather met her there. That I know. But at that time, the Creeks and the Cherokee basically occupied, I won't say owned, but occupied most of Georgia. You could cut it in half around the center of Georgia, the Piedmont section. The Creeks controlled the southern part, the Cherokees controlled the northern part. And Wilkes County was probably the furthest west you could go without running into problems with the Creeks. In fact, at the time of the American Revolution, there were two battles going on, one with the Brits and one with the Native Americans, as there was a push as more and more people migrated to what is now the United States looking for land. So the battles with the Indians were over land and ownership of that land. So there were several battles going on during this period of time. 96 was a main trading post between Fort George and Charleston, which was a major port. Of course, the British controlled Charleston. It was also a Native American trail that was used by Native Americans as well as furriers and people who were skinning animals for a living. If you get a chance, go to 96. The federal government has a park over there. It's full of information of what was going on in the South at this period of time. Now, you notice I said there was a split, even from the get-go, between the North and the South. And it didn't stop with the American Revolution. Now all was lovey-dovey. There was a split with Jeffersonian philosophy that believed, one, with a limited central government. And there was a Hamiltonian philosophy that believed in a strong central government. You hear mixed reviews when people talk history. It was all about independence. Was it independence from King George and a dictatorial society? Or was it independence with a strong central government? I believe in the Jeffersonian philosophy, that it was, originally Jefferson wanted the government of what is now the United States to be very limited in its authority. And if you read the Constitution and read it with an open mind, it sure points that way. Hamilton, on the other hand, wanted a very strong central government, very similar to the parliamentary philosophy that England was starting to adopt. Now, again, America split. America was split from the beginning. The British, upon surrendering, accepted a truce with all what was then the 13 colonies. Every colony signed a peace accord with the British and accepted the British surrender. The United States, Congress was not even formed, what little government there was in the United States did not surrender. Each individual colony at the time surrendered. Keep that in mind. As we move forward through the 1800s, we come to, say, the 1830s, when the Federal Army escorted at least the Cherokee Nation to Oklahoma, took them over by force. Cherokee Nation did not surrender. They didn't have the manpower to fight. They didn't have the equipment to fight. They were completely taken over. Their land taken by the United States. Now, you may agree with me. You may not agree with me. You may say I'm a dumb idiot for thinking that way. But I'm sorry. They were here first. The U.S. government took their land. And I can say this because my great-great-grandfather acquired land because after the Cherokee were escorted out, the U.S. government was giving land grants. This is your land. You can do what you want to with it. He acquired land in that fashion. And I can go walk that land today. My granddaddy eventually lost the land, or it was sold off. Kids left, blah, blah, blah. So the whole family history is still there. The land's owned by a timber company. He acquired land, though, from land that was taken by the Cherokees. Also keep in mind that during this time, there was a lot of unfriendliness in Congress. He wasn't lovey-dovey like you might want to think he was. People threatened people with duels. Duels were legal at the time. In fact, I don't recall the gentleman, but there was at least one death from a duel. Now keep in mind, they would step off 100 paces. They had a black powder, short little gun, and if at 100 paces you could hit anything, you were damn lucky. It didn't take a whole lot of expertise, but you weren't going to hit anything. A lot of people went to a duel, and nobody got shot. The gentleman who did perish in a duel had 3 duels that day. The third one got him. So there were at least 2 firings that nobody got hurt. The third one took him out. So Congress was not all-inclusive. There was a push to acquire Western land. The Louisiana Purchase, per se. We hear a lot about the Missouri Compromise. And I've read a lot of this, and there are a lot of conflicting theories as to what was going on. I personally, and this is my personal opinion, have come to the conclusion that the Northern Brethren wanted to keep the Western movement lily white. Now you ask, what do I say about this? First of all, there was a movement in this country of colonization. A lot of folks wanted to colonize the blacks that were on U.S. soil and send them to a colony somewhere off U.S. soil. Lincoln, the old President Abraham Lincoln, was a colonist. So was Sir Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. He believed in colonies. The Missouri Compromise was no more than to keep blacks out of Missouri and the westward movement and allow the whites coming out of the north to acquire the land and farm it without competing against slave labor or cheap labor. That's my opinion. Read what you want to into it, but I'm convinced. We hear a lot about John Brown and the abolitionists. There was an abolitionist movement. There was a strong feeling by some that all slaves should be released. Even in the South, there was a strong belief, because of their Christian beliefs, that they needed to do something about slavery, but they couldn't come up with a compromise. Robert E. Lee released all his slaves as the war began, slaves that he inherited, because he had no use for them. You've heard about the Underground Railroad, I believe it was Harriet Beecher Stowe. What you don't hear, though, is what awaited the blacks that took advantage of the Underground Railroad. They were not given medical treatment. They were not given houses. They were not provided clothing. They were just kind of dumped into a strange cold land of Canada with little or no support. There are reports of tremendous tragedies of the conditions they lived in after they went through the Underground Railroad. Most of them would have been better off staying slaves, particularly with the smaller slave owners. So we've come to slavery as an issue. We've come to the U.S. was split from the beginning. We've gone through Hamiltonian and Jeffersonian. We've talked about the removal of the Cherokees. I'm not sure what happened to the Creeks, other than the fact I think they may have been wiped out with military force, but somehow or other they disappeared into the West as well. Keep in mind, once they went to the West, as the Western expansion further moved, the U.S. government kept taking and moving the reservations. They were not treated well. In fact, Sherman, everybody knows Sherman, Buffalo soldiers, which at that time was after the hostilities of the 1860s, and went and raided the Sioux during wintertime when they were all together. They were all trying to get in a protective area, trying to keep warm and survive the harsh winters. Sherman and these Buffalo soldiers, no, most of the Buffalo soldiers were black, just wiped out the Sioux. Women, children, didn't matter. So when I hear slavery, there are many parts to slavery. It's not a one-liner.